I was not born to be forced. I will breathe after my own fashion. Henry David Thoreau wrote this line years later in his essay Civil Disobedience, reflecting on one of his powerful moments, the night he spent in jail. But why was he jailed? Because he refused to pay a poll tax, a small act of civil disobedience against much bigger injustices. President James K. Polk's war on Mexico, and a government defending the institution of slavery. Thoreau saw the system as sick, led by a president eager for war and blind to basic human dignity. The essay was published in 1849, first named as Resistance to Civil Government. It was a powerful argument for the moral duty of individuals to resist unjust laws. That one essay would later inspire world-changing figures like Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., and many others. That's why I chose him for today's video. I will be discussing how in sick societies of ours, we as an ordinary, honest person can live a life which Thoreau wrote as, "Let your life be a counter-friction to stop the machine." Thoreau believed that truth is not decided by the crowd, and that what is right doesn't need majority approval. As he boldly wrote, "All men recognize the right of revolution, that is, the right to refuse allegiance to, and to resist the government when its tyranny or its inefficiency are great and unendurable." In simple terms, when a government becomes unjust, when it starts crushing human dignity or defending evil, people not only have the right to resist, they have the duty to. For Thoreau, conscience must come before compliance. A person's moral compass matters more than the laws passed by passive majorities. He wrote, "A minority is powerless while it conforms to the majority. It is not even a minority then, but it is irresistible when it clogs by its whole weight." In other words, a single person or a small group that refuses to go along with injustice becomes a real force, precisely because they disrupt the smooth functioning of the unjust machine. And history proves him right. Think of Socrates, killed by majority vote for daring to question the state, or Copernicus and Martin Luther, once condemned as heretics for challenging false beliefs, now honored as heroes. Thoreau asked, "Why is it that governments always crucify Christ, excommunicate Copernicus and Luther, and pronounce Washington and Franklin rebels? Because conscience often comes before the crowd, and when it does, it changes the world." Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., inspired directly by Thoreau, wrote, "One has not only a legal but a moral responsibility to obey just laws. Conversely, one has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws." Thoreau insisted on a resistance by a single person, as many just do not resist thinking how one man can bring any change. He wrote, "Any man more right than his neighbors constitutes a majority of one already. You don't need permission from the masses to follow your conscience." He urged abolitionists not to wait for popular support to act. He called on them to withdraw their support from the government immediately, both in person and in property, even if they were alone in doing so. Waiting for the majority was just another excuse to delay justice. So, when the crowd is blind, let your conscience be your guide. One person standing tall can still cast a long shadow and shake the very foundations of injustice and the disease which is rotting our society, which I am going to discuss now. A society is sick when people blindly obey laws, customs, and systems that violate the most basic human values, when obedience becomes more important than conscience. In his time, America was gripped by two major evils: slavery and an aggressive, unjust war against Mexico. Thoreau was outraged that most citizens either supported these injustices or, worse, stayed silent. He pointed out that the Mexican-American War wasn't waged by the will of the people, but by a few powerful men who used the government as a weapon. A handful of elites drove the country into war and deeper into slavery, while the masses looked the other way. That silence, that conformity, was the disease. Thoreau saw the symptoms everywhere. "People," he said, "eat, drink, marry, as their fathers did, living life without ever questioning whether their actions are just. They simply follow. And in following, they lose their moral compass. He wrote one of his most striking lines, "It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society." Think about that. Just because something is legal, common, or accepted doesn't make it right. In fact, Thoreau warned that when unjust laws become normal, conformity itself becomes a form of violence. He believed most governments are inefficient at best and harmful at worst. The stronger the government, he argued, the weaker the soul of the society it governs. That's why he embraced the motto, "That government is best which governs least." And even added, "When men are prepared for it, that will be the kind of government which governs not at all." In other words, a mature, moral society shouldn't need to be controlled. It should guide itself by conscience. And history offers plenty of examples of this sickness. Laws that once required people to own slaves, laws that forced men to fight in unjust wars, laws that denied women and minorities their rights. All of these were legal, yet profoundly immoral. So what did Thoreau say to the person who's ordered by law to participate in injustice? This is what I am going to discuss now. If law requires you to be the agent of injustice to another, then, I say, break the law. Thoreau didn't just preach this line, he lived it. His most famous work, Walden, was written in the woods when he started living away from the cities. In 1846, he refused to pay a poll tax to policemen. He was jailed for a single night, but he wore that jail time like a badge of honor. According to legend, when Emerson asked him, "What are you doing in there?" Thoreau replied, "Waldo, the question is, what are you doing out there?" That moment says it all. Doing nothing in the face of injustice is far worse than disobedience. Well, someone paid his tax afterwards, but his non-violent resistance did raise questions in people who were blindly following the rules imposed by the government. He imagined, what if just 10 honest people, refusing to hold slaves, were imprisoned for it? It would be the abolition of slavery in America. In other words, nonconformity works not by violence, but by exposing injustice and withdrawing consent. It jams the gears of the machine. He believed that even one moral act, done from principle, doesn't just make a statement. It restructures the moral landscape. Action from principle changes things in relations. It is essentially revolutionary. And he was right. History proves it. His quiet defiance sparked louder movements. Abolitionists like William Lloyd Garrison and Frederick Douglass stood against the law when the law was wrong. Gandhi later said that Thoreau's essay gave him confirmation of the effectiveness of deliberate resistance to unjust laws. We see it again in early Christians defying Roman edicts, in the Boston Tea Party, where colonists dumped tea instead of paying unfair taxes. In each case, people risked jail, fines, or violence. But their refusal to conform jolted sick systems into change. Thousands joined sit-ins, marches, and boycotts, not to destroy, but to heal. Their nonviolent nonconformity created tension that forced America to confront itself, and ultimately helped lead to the Civil Rights Act of 1964. In every era, the cure has been the same: individuals refusing to go along with the sickness. Thoreau knew that change begins slow, but once it starts, it's unstoppable. What is once well done is done forever.